Now, it is a great pleasure. Joining me now, we have South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham, a very old friend. He is now the ranking member on the Budget Committee. Mr. Lindsey Graham, it's a pleasure to see you. So, this is the Inflation Reduction Act, but the CBO just wrote you a letter saying there is no inflation reduction. Well, what do you make of that, sir?
It'd be like Lindsey Graham marketing himself as being very tall. I am not. I have many flaws. I have some assets. But the bill is a complete fraud. So when you ask people outside of politics, you know, Joe Biden today, President Biden was at the Business Roundtable urging them to call Congress to pass a bill to lower inflation. Okay, so the Inflation Reduction Act, when looked at by the Congressional Budget Office, the gold standard, according to Joe Manchin, says that in 2022, it will have negligible effect on inflation. In 2023, next year, inflation will go up or down by 0.1%. That doesn't sound like, to me, it's reducing inflation. They also told us that the subsidies for Obamacare include people that make $304,000 a year. That doesn't sound like helping the poor. And it also says the 15% minimum tax that you described will create disincentives to build factories and buy equipment during a recession. Now, who in their right mind wants to tax and spend during a recession? Who wants to create policies during a recession to de-incentivize investing into the private sector? Only liberals who worship at the altar of climate change. Climate change is a religion for them, not a problem. And if you want environmental justice, get China and India to play the same game we're playing.
Ah, there you go. Now, that's an interesting thought. By the way, just on that one, I'm just going to digress real quick. It's a great thought, Lindsey. This is something that Rick Perry said months and months ago. You know, if the Bidens would open the spigots for LNG exports to Asia, India, China, whomever, that would do more to reduce global climate problems than anything we're doing here with $400 billion worth of subsidies, tax credits for electric cars for people who don't need the money. In other words, if we did, we could actually reduce the global climate problem if we'd export LNG, which they don't want us to do. But I digress.
Well, you're right.
I mean, it's an important point. So, Senator Graham, let me ask you this. In all seriousness, since there's now all these big deal models saying this will not reduce inflation, we're left with a big tax bill and we're left with a big spending bill. The tax bill will deepen recession. The spending bill is likely to increase inflation. Why do we need this bill? And is there any way to stop it, sir?
It's driven by the climate change community within the Democratic caucus. Joe Manchin, who's been a friend, who preserved the filibuster and voted against H.R. 1, and he's done some good things, I think has made a huge mistake here. Matter of fact, we had dinner last night. I said, Joe, there's a 16.4 cents per barrel tax on imported oil that's tied to inflation. That tax was eliminated in 1995. It's a vampire tax. They're bringing it back. That's going to add cost to the pump. And the Obamacare subsidies are not going to end in 3 years. If you score them over a 10-year period, it wipes out all the savings in this bill. It is inflationary. And the reason I know it's inflationary is because when you spend money at the government level and you tax the private sector, you get less growth. And the taxes on corporations are passed down to individual people. And when you look at the distribution of the tax increases, it falls on people well below $100,000. So they've sold him an idea that doesn't exist in reality.
One other quick point on that, the connection between this tax and lower wages. Just think of it this way, in just common sense. If you're running a business and the government taxes you so you make fewer and fewer profits, your profits might fall.
Right.
You got no money to pay the workforce higher wages. In fact, you won't have money to keep them employed. So the profits factor, now I know Democrats hate profits, I get that, but most men and women in business like profits and use profits not only to invest in better equipment, as you said, but also to pay their employees more money, i.e. wages and salaries. Now, Joe Manchin's a pragmatic guy. I thought he knew all about that. His family's been in business for many years. That's one of the reasons that I don't understand him. He's a good man, but I'm so puzzled by this.
Well, I just think he feels like he needs to throw a bone to these people after saying no to their radical agenda. You know, what bothers me the most is I worked on a bipartisan infrastructure bill that made sense to me. I worked on gun legislation to keep guns out of the hands of mentally unstable people. That made sense to me. The CHIPS bill, I understand it was by no means perfect, but I want to make chips here not be dependent on Taiwan and other countries. So before the ink was dry, they dropped this new spending bill in the name of climate change. This is to tax and spend in the name of climate change. The energy expansion items come later on the continuing resolution. Good luck with that. So this is really a bad deal that makes all of our problems worse. And I'm very disappointed in what Senator Manchin has done. This does not help West Virginia. If you got a truck in West Virginia, you got a bunch of trucks, you're going to get a per barrel tax on imported oil, which there will be more of because we don't make it here, and your price at the gas pump is going to go up. Everything's going to go up because of this bill. If you don't believe me, look at Penn Wharton, CBO, and others.
Yeah, no, all these big shot models agree. Actually, Lindsay, you and I agree. You're just like a supply sider right now. It's fantastic stuff after all these years. Kyrsten Sinema, Senator Sinema, have you talked to her lately? Do you have any intel for us?
No, okay. She wants to do away with the carried interest loophole. That's only $12.6 billion. You know, that doesn't change the nature of this bill. This is a tax and spend bill that will crush investment at a time we need more investment. She's worried about the minimum tax. And let me tell you, this is not closing loopholes. What the Trump administration did with your leadership, Larry, is it allowed companies to expense in the year they purchased equipment. They expand their business through the tax code, so they did more of it. The economy was growing like gangbusters because we incentivized growing a business. Well, this 15% minimum tax, it collects revenue by destroying the expensing provision. And that's why CBO says it will hurt economic growth because it de-incentivizes buying equipment and building factories. I hope Kyrsten will look at that. Everything we need to do to get out of a recession, this bill is a wet blanket on what we need to do.
Well, amen to that. By the way, Senator, that's the nicest thing you've ever said to me. Honestly,
I like you a lot. You're a smart dude. You've grown on me over time.
And vice versa, Senator.
Thank you, Larry.
We'll get you back on before too long so we can talk about Lindsey Graham, budget chairman, and a balanced budget. How's that, sir?
Amen.
All right,
From
you're
your
terrific.
lips to God's ears.
Thank you, Senator. Really appreciate it.